Uh, I was just on here to share some more thoughts, and pretty much these thoughts are. I know these are just my personal opinion and my own personal way of living, I guess you could say. Uh, I guess I just want to make it clear that it's my own personal way of living, because I know not everybody would want to live this way, and that's perfectly fine. Um, I grew up in an environment where everybody's just a perfectionist, and everything has to be perfect. I mean, even before me and my boyfriend decided we were going to have the wedding at the zoo, which apparently we've now changed our mind again. um, he didn't like the idea that the woman wasn't being completely honest with me or being very straightforward. Uh, and I guess it was making me uncomfortable too, but I thought he really wanted the zoo, so I was just going to go with it then because, I love him. If that's something he wants, then I guess we'll just make it happen, is how I felt. But being it made him uncomfortable too, like, is there any hidden fees that we don't know about that this woman isn't going to tell us about, and then we're going to end up owing so much money than what we can bear to even save up? Uh, you know, so we changed our minds. But before we even thought about the zoo, I talked about, like wedding plans with my mom. And this is how easy and just going and chilled I am. I thought maybe for the wedding, you could just have people eat normal food. No catering, just, have some barbecue, maybe some hot wings, hamburger, chili. I mean, stuff that you just normal food everybody likes. What's the big deal about having to have all this fancy stuff? I just don't need all the fancy stuff. In fact, I don't really like it too much. It just looks so gaudy. It looks like something working so hard to be attractive and have attention. And sometimes it doesn't even taste good. I'd rather have something that may not look that fancy, but it tastes delicious, than something that looks absolutely gorgeous that you just don't want to eat it. It's that pretty, and then you eat right into it, and you're like, eh? Um, so, and my mom was like, looked at me and she's like, "Oh, we are not doing that." And that was, right, the first things out of her mouth. We are not doing that. So it's like it's not even her wedding. And I mean, the whole time she's just shown um displeasure for any of my ideas for mine and my boyfriend's wedding. Um and the one time she showed any joy about it, it was in public in the zoo, right in front of the event lady. In the moment we were out of sight and in the car and away from the event lady where we wouldn't accidentally bump into her or something again in the zoo, all of a sudden it was she just didn't like the idea. Um, my point is, like, I grew up in an environment where my mom is a very much so a perfectionist, that the house was never clean enough. I I can't tell you how many times she said she would die of embarrassment if somebody walked into the house right now. And it just got to the point me and my siblings were like, as many times as you died of embarrassment, you're a zombie now. You know that, right? So that's how bad it is. It was never clean in her eyes. Um, and the house was clean, but just she couldn't see it that way. Um, and I guess that's where I got my chilled out, personality. Just lay back. Um, Because I know what it's like to just feel like nothing you do is good enough. And you will work your ass off and exhaust your mind and exhaust yourself physically trying to be good enough, and it's just never good enough. To the point your brain just crashes and you're like, you know what? I'm good enough. Because if you don't tell yourself you're good enough, you're gonna just let people keep pushing you around until you're exhausted and you have no life in you. You may be breathing, but you have no life in you. Um, and with my mom, it felt very emotionally exhausting. I could get the house cleaned, get the stove cleaned, get cleaned out from underneath the stove and underneath the fridge, and get the fridge inside the fridge cleaned, and dishes cleaned, floor swept, floor mopped, counters cleaned, dusted. I mean, just get in there in the nitty gritty and get things clean. And she would always still say it was dirty. So, I grew in an environment that was a perfectionist. And, I could see, just, it wasn't just growing up in that and then seeing how it could suck the soul right out of you. It was also seeing others and how it just sucked the life out of them too. I mean, they had no time to relax because they were so, I guess you could say, obsessed and addicted to making sure the house was clean, making sure it was perfect and presentable for guests. There was such an obsession to prove you were better and perfect and the best than anybody else that there just was no life left in them. And I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to spend, pretty much I felt the exhaustion of not being good enough when it came to cleaning the house to my mom, and I saw the exhaustion of other women, of how they had to prove they were good enough or better or whatever. And, I consciously made a decision. I didn't want to live my life that way. I did not want to live to the exhaustion of having to have a house perfect. I didn't want to, maybe perhaps one day when I have my own home, live to the point where I wasn't happy in that home because I was so obsessed making sure it was clean. And when I say clean, I don't mean like just I guess you would. When I say I didn't want to live obsessed with my house being clean, I don't mean that I want to live filthy. I just didn't want to live obsessed. um, you know, we look at it as my mom. She's never going to feel good enough, and she's never going to feel valuable enough because she can't just accept her house is clean enough. She can't accept that she's good enough, so everything in her life now is not going to seem good enough to her. I think a lot of the view that she sees others as or accuses other people of, such as accusing me of things I haven't done, or accusing other people of being liars or secretive, and just other just nasty, nasty things. And I think that's because she herself can't face what's inside of her. Um, so she looks for trying to fix others' problems because she can't fix what's inside of her. And she can't accept herself, so everything else around her can't be accepted. So, yeah, I didn't want to live that way. So when I could see, how she can't accept herself, and I've seen how other women, ones that I was friends with or my mom was friends with, you enter their home and the first thing out of their mouth is, "Oh, I'm so sorry, the house is a mess," and you're looking around and you're like, "What mess are you talking about?" um, And my mom does the same thing. Somebody enters our home, and there's never been a day that she'll just say, "Oh, here, let me get you some water," and just chill out and hang out with them and talk. The first thing out of her mouth every single time, and she's never missed a beat on it, is, "I'm so sorry, the house is a mess." She apologizes for a mess that's not even there. Um, and I don't apologize because I learned nobody's perfect. I've learned we're all just a little messy, and I learned that that's okay. As they might say, a little dirt don't hurt. It is okay to not be perfect. It's okay to sweep your floor and maybe not mop it every day, but at least give it a good sweep. It's okay to stay tidy, but not obsessed to the point you're not even happy in your home. It's okay to, not vacuum the floor every day, but maybe vacuum it after you've had somebody run around with breadcrumbs or something. It's okay to not clean a dish in the sink once it hits the sink. It's okay to let a few of them get in the sink enough to make a sink of dishes to clean up. It it's it's just okay. You know? At least to me it's okay. Uh I and I guess I'm just that way because my family, as I said, is a perfectionist. When you're apologizing for a mess that's not even there and obsessed and you start screaming at your kids for leaving the house a mess when they cleaned it up. Um there's a point you might want to realize you have an obsession and kind of an addiction there. To the point you can't even see a clean house even when it's clean. Uh, you know, as I said though, this is my personal opinion. I know there's some women out there and they enjoy cleaning much more than I do. Um, and I think that's fine. I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, then that's great. You're living your life happy. Then you're not miserable. You're not emotionally exhausted. You're doing what you like doing. Um, you know, as for me being so obsessed to have the house, as I say it, catalog clean, home that doesn't look like it's even being lived in, it's just that clean. It's not for me. I to me it was just too emotionally exhausting to work myself to the point that I had no time to get dressed. I had no time to shower. I had no time to get decent. Had to pick either between being decent or having a clean, this obsessively cleaned house. Um, so I just picked what worked for me rather than obsessing like my mom did, and does. Not did. She still does it. Um, and what works for me is getting the house decent. If I obsess getting every dish clean that hits the sink the moment it hits, I never have a moment or a break. Because my mom and my dad and my baby sister are all using dishes and they don't clean it themselves. So, and they eat when they're hungry. My family doesn't really sit down and have meals together. Unless the times that we go out to eat, then we are actually forced to sit there and actually have a meal together. Um, for the most part, sadly, my family does not eat a meal together. So, there's dishes hitting the sink sometimes every 10 minutes in the day. Because my family, will eat at different times and just, kind of eat when they're hungry and never share a meal together. Um, so there's dishes, there's pots, and there's pans, and there's cups just, getting in the sink. And if I were to obsess to clean every single one the moment they hit the sink, I would not have a break. I would not have a moment to breathe. I would not have a moment to even get dressed or brush my teeth or anything. Um, if I obsessed on having the house uh, catalog clean, then I, would be too busy picking up everything that fell to the living room floor constantly all the time because my family, as I said, they don't take care of things. They don't mind treating me like I'm lazy, but the truth is I'm the one picking up after them. Um, and the only reason I do that anymore is because I do it for myself. I don't do it to prove it to them anymore. I know I can't prove anything to them. I can't prove to my mom that I'm clean because she's already made her decision. Then my baby sister's the clean one and I'm the lazy one, even though my baby sister's on the couch doing nothing all day and I'm the one cleaning up and picking up her shoes and her costume accessories. Uh, so how in the world does my mom, choose that I'm the lazy one and my baby sister's not? I honestly don't think she believes that for a second. I think she's just decided she wants to spoil my baby sister, and I think she just decided she wants to lash her pain on me. So I don't believe it for 1 second that she actually thinks I'm lazy. Um, so yeah. Um, but my point is, if I did obsess having a catalog clean, there wouldn't be a moment where I get a break. So, I learned to just do what worked for me, and what worked for me was getting a decent, picking the stuff off the floor, clearing and wiping the counters, sweeping the floor, um, getting the dishes done, and then, you know, taking a break for me, and that's usually my shower, and then getting dressed, and just having a little quiet time in my room where I can sit away from the negativity and the drama and the lashing out and the snotty attitude. So I just sit in my room for a little bit after I've, gotten showered and cleaned up and dressed, and I just sit in my room for a little bit. Then I head back out there, and if the house looks decent, I don't worry about it. If if trash starts piling up a little bit where it starts looking dirty, well, then I pick it up. But um, this is pretty much just my thoughts on how to handle and maintain a house, and it's just personally what I do, but I wouldn't push it on anybody or suggest it to anybody because I understand people function differently. Um, some, live their life wanting to have the house catalog clean, and they can keep up with it. I don't know how, but they do. And, good for them. And, some people, honestly, I just try not to be judgmental. I feel if your house is a little more messy than mine is, it's fine. A little dirt don't hurt. It's completely okay. Um, and if it's more clean than mine again, that's okay. Um, the only time I would really be concerned is if somebody literally cleans nothing and maybe hoarding. And that's not because I think they're lazy or a pig or something. Um, I think that it's just because that's unhealthy for them physically to do that. Because then you have mold growing in places. You start having rotting food in places you don't even know it's there because it's hiding beneath things that are hoarded. Um, so yeah, I think that would be a time I would say that maybe you might want to try to clear it up. And maybe seek counseling, because I've noticed hoarders, it's not so much that they're lazy, it's just there's a lot of something going on in their head and they need help with that. And the hoarding is mostly just a symptom of that, of what's going on. And yeah, and, equally for somebody who is obsessed with cleaning to where they can't have the feeling or the knowing that they have a clean house, that would also be something where I would say you might want to seek help. Um, because the way I look at it is like somebody who's bulimic or somebody who is overeating. There is a point where both are very unhealthy. Uh, Neither one is more healthy than the other. Both is very unhealthy. To overeat, you're damaging your body and giving it extra work from all that extra weight. And I'm not judging anybody who's overweight. I myself am overweight, so not perfect. Just using examples. And somebody who's bulimic, you're starving yourself. You're taking nutrients away from your body that your body needs to survive and live and function. Uh, so being overweight, you put too much on your body, too much stress to carry. And when someone is, I don't know what the other one is. There's bulimic, and then there's anorexic, where you're taking nutrients away from your body to live, that it needs to live. So that's the way I look at house cleaning. There's a lot of in between that's okay. Mostly clean, decent, little messy, but it's still good enough. It's okay to live that way. It's all to one's personal way of living. And then there's the hoarders. You might say they're making their house overweight. There's too much stress and too much garbage and whatnot in there that needs to be cleaned out. And then those that are overly clean and have no time for anything but cleaning are kind of the anorexics of house cleaning. They're taking all the joy out of life. They have taken all the nutrients of what makes a home a home. Um, so yeah, this is just, as I said, these are just my thoughts. These are just my personal opinions. Um, so I'm not here to judge anybody or tell you how you should live your life. Um, I'm just sharing personally how I live my life and how I personally clean the house. Um, and a lot to do with why I live that way. Um, it's simply just because I couldn't live a perfectionist. It was too exhausting. Uh, I had other things to do. I wanted to live life. To me, what life was not all about house cleaning. Life was also about going to a lake and taking a swim. Life is also about taking a moment to breathe. Life is also about um, getting up and going to hang out with friends, or at the time going to church. And there's things about life that are just meant to live. And I couldn't do all that and clean house at the same time. It would just suck the life out of me and keep me from living life. It was like being anorexic. um, in the soul. Not so much with eating, because I'm clearly not anorexic, but it was like being anorexic in the soul. I wasn't getting fed enough in the soul, and I needed some nutrients to live. So I just realized being a perfectionist is who my mom is, and I think that she's, I guess you could say, anorexic in her soul, and kind of like other anorexics, they might try to convince you to be anorexic. Uh, so, and they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. She didn't see anything wrong with living perfectionistly and, you know, pushing that on me and trying to get me to be that way too. Uh, Honestly, I think that's just because it was me that she was pushing it, because she won't do that to my baby sister. As I said, I think she just picks one to put her pain on. She doesn't feel good enough, so she has to make someone else like me not feel good enough. Like I'm not good enough at cleaning. Um, and I think it was my late teens, early 20s that I finally just decided I don't want to live that way. I want to live clean, but I don't want to live obsessively clean to where life is sucked out of me and there's just no joy. So I chose to be decent. Um, and nowadays I don't really let what my mom says affect me, because I know I'm the one keeping the house clean. So, when she starts throwing remarks at me like, you want to get married to your boyfriend, well, you better get this mess cleaned up then, because, you're, that's what a wife does. And I don't let those words get to me so much. Because, frankly, the mess she's telling me to clean up isn't mine, and I didn't make it. So, even if it is, I don't think that it's, a housewife is meant to clean everything. But even if it was, I- you know, I'm not afraid that I'm not good enough. I very well know I keep my messes cleaned up, and I very well know I do good enough to clean up after others. So when she's sitting there trying to guilt me and make me feel like I'm going to be a horrible wife one day, it really doesn't work on me so much anymore, because I know I do good enough, and I know the mess she's getting on to me about isn't mine. Um, if there's anybody she needs to worry about not being a clean housewife one day, it would be my baby sister. Um, or it would be her herself, who is a housewife. Uh, no offense, I didn't mean to be mean there. That's just more so a fact. You know, I'm the only one that cleans the house, so I'm not worried about if I can keep the house clean, when I'm married. Um, and something I very much love about my boyfriend is I know he won't expect me to be the only one that cleans. Um, when he was visiting, he actually went over and helped me with the dishes, so I actually found that very, very sweet. Um, he didn't really help with anything else, but I only think that's because this isn't his house, so probably was very confused as to where the hell everything went. But the dishes, it was just rinse them off and then stack them in the, uh, dish tray for them to, dry off. Dish rack. So, it was pretty simple and easy, and he can figure that out. So yeah, that was just my thoughts I wanted to share. And again, that's just personally how I live. I don't expect anybody else to do that. That's up to you how you want to live your life, and um, yeah, just much peace and blessings to whoever watches this. May you have a good life, and just live what is good for you. Live what's good for you, because that's the only way to live and truly be happy. It doesn't mean you're selfish to live what's good for you. I understand compromising and everything, but don't compromise so far that you don't live your life anymore. Um, because then it's no longer compromising. Um, it's just being a slave to having to be good enough when you're already good enough. So just remember to live what makes you happy. Um, so whether it's cleaning things decently like I do or not, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you do what makes you happy. I'm doing what works for me, and I would hope anybody would do the same, and that's, do what works for you. Um, so yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to share, and I guess I'll just stop rambling on now, and may you have a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening, and goodbye now.